Let's now turn to Hans Brandt from our political desk. Hans, as we heard, Syria and Ukraine are the two issues which have dominated all the talks so far. What do you make of, firstly, of what was said about Syria? Now, Medvedev said that Russia is not bombing any civilians there.
Yes, that's quite curious, since we all know that about 50 or 60,000 civilians are at the border between Turkey and Syria trying to get into Turkey because they're fleeing bombardments which are targeted at the area around Aleppo, and which are also the bombardments are coming from Russian planes. So there's certainly some bombardment going on there, and there's certainly civilians being hit by these bombardments. So it's a rather curious statement, but it's similar to what Melinda Crane was just saying. Russia is offering dialogue and participating in dialogue in a lot of fora, in a lot of places. At the same time, it is creating facts on the ground, especially in Syria.
But they also talked about Ukraine, and we're talking about dialogue. It seems they've already had some discussions on Ukraine.
Yes, indeed. In Ukraine, obviously, the discussions have been going on for quite a long time. Apparently, there was another meeting this morning amongst those 4 countries that are involved in those discussions, trying to bring forward that process, that so-called Minsk agreement. The situation in Ukraine is in a sense, a kind of frozen conflict at the moment. It's not really getting any worse. It's not really getting any better. That's not only a problem of the negotiations, it's also a problem in Ukraine itself. The Ukrainian government, Ukrainian parliament are not managing at the moment to fulfill the conditions that had been agreed upon on that side as well. But the Ukraine conflict there is an exchange of fire virtually every day, and Russia has the capacity to notch up that conflict, to increase the heat there again at any time, basically.
And Hans, listening to what people have been saying so far, we've had 2 prime ministers and the NATO Secretary General, as well as the German Foreign Minister. There seems to be a certain sense that Europe is at the crossroads, to use the words of Manuel Valls, the Prime Minister of France, that it needs to pull together. What was your sense?
Yes, indeed. I think you have to say that within Europe, or certainly within this European Union, there is quite a lot of tension between Eastern European states and the Western European states. You could also call that between the newer members of the European Union and those that founded the European Union. The East European states feel a lot more threatened by Russia because they used to be within Russian sphere of influence and have only been outside that sphere of influence for a couple of decades. So they are feeling very insecure by Russian saber-rattling, you might say. At the same time, the Eastern European countries are not in agreement with West European countries on how to deal with the migration crisis. They don't want to take up as many migrants, as many refugees from the Middle East as the West European countries want to take up. So, in fact, one of the leaders was saying this morning, if in a year's time we meet again at the Munich Security Conference and the European Union is basically as it is today, we could regard that as an achievement. That's some sense to what extent people are worried about how things are going at the moment in Europe.
Right, Hans Brandt, thank you very much for that analysis. And of course, we'll talk to you later in the day when we return to the Munich Security Conference. Thank you very much.